Okay, the last section of this chapter is called Conversation from Monologue to Dialogue. And I'm trying to minimize this. Okay. Many students have said to me over years that they just don't know how to have a conversation with someone they don't know. So I don't even know that it's changing it from a monologue to a dialogue as it is having just getting up the courage to speak, maybe. I know that most of us, if we're uncomfortable in a situation, we'll just grab our phone. So the phone ends up being a shield that keeps you from having a conversation. And the textbook says they're going to talk about different things that we can do that can apply to any all right, I just went blank. Any modality, you could do this online also, but I really want to, and the book focuses more on face-to-face conversation because this is definitely a dying art. Okay, so let's look at the very first one that talks about 5 guidelines that can help you have just a casual conversation with someone. Okay. It's not a recipe where if you follow these steps in order in the right amount, you'll have a perfect conversation. But again, they're guidelines. Okay, number 1, introductions. Introduce yourself. And I know this is terrible, or it's very hard to do. It's not terrible. It's hard for people to ask someone what their name is when if you know you've been introduced to somebody, it can be challenging to sorry, my daughter just texted me that she got her booster and she's starting to feel better. Okay. It can be hard to say to someone, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. But I think that's what we have to do. People aren't going to think less of you because we have all been in that situation. So definitely, remember to introduce yourself. And if you see someone and you start a conversation with them and they haven't used your name, you might say, just reintroduce yourself. That is okay. All right. So, second one, ask questions. In general, people love to talk about themselves. So if you ask someone a question, you've just said you matter to me. And don't just ask the question and then space out. Actually listen to what they say so that you can keep the conversation going a little bit. And what I like the end of this section in the textbook, they ask some questions that can be used in many different situations. And always remember to have your question be open-ended. So you say, so what do you like best about your new, whatever's going on, your new phone, your new school, your new boss, your new class, your new sweetheart, whatever it is. Or I'd love to hear your goals for this, whatever it is that you've been talking about, project, relationship, workout, year. Okay. Tell me what you think or feel or want about this decision or person or situation. Okay. So remember, ask questions, but ask open-ended ones. Because if you say, so are you having fun at this party? And they say, yes. Where do you go from there? So you ask a question that's going to encourage them to go on at some length. You have to remember that while asking questions is good, it's appropriate, it's important for you to reciprocate, to also talk. So if someone says to you, how is your family? You need to ask the question back, oh yeah, how is yours? If you notice, okay, I just went blank on what I was going to say here. All right, skip it. It'll come to me. What if the person is going on about a topic that you're not really interested in? Then You know, you keep asking questions and say, I don't know much about annuities, but it sounds like you are really liking this part of your job, and then you can almost steer it in a slightly different direction. Okay, now comes your turn. Um, don't don't let the other person turn this into a monologue. Well, at a certain point, they might turn to you and say, "And you, tell me about you." So it's your turn to talk. Or if they haven't, if the person isn't giving you that opportunity, this is trickier. You need to somehow say, "Oh, well, I don't remember. So you have this new job that you really like, and it's really interesting because I have a new job also." Okay. We should all be following these. Keep whatever you say, keep it focused, keep it short, keep it interesting, and keep it appropriate. I always violate the keep it focused. I am great at going off on tangents. In fact, when I start telling a story, my younger brothers look at each other and say, "Another long and pointless story." Okay, I am working on this. Keep it short. Try not to go on too much. Keep it interesting. You don't always know what's going to be interesting to other people, but try to do a little bit of audience analysis. If you are talking to, I can't even think of what good example. I don't know. I'll have to ask about this in class. Okay, and keep it appropriate. When you are just meeting people, you might want to be careful about the kind of jokes you tell, for example, because what you think is funny, other people might not think is funny. And then last of all, stay aware and adapt. You're doing some self-monitoring, not obsessive self-monitoring, but you are asking yourself, did I talk too much? Did I share too much? Did I remember to ask follow-up questions? And it's, again, don't be obsessive about it, but make sure that you spend some time just kind of evaluating how you are doing. And you can always, you could say something like, "Oh, I hope I didn't offend you when I said such and such." So that's how you can increase your awareness. Okay, so this is just for a casual conversation. What do we do when we are in a situation where it is hard to be civil? It's hard to be polite with someone else. So I'm going to ask you to watch the Daryl Davis TED Talk, "What to Do When Someone Just Doesn't Like You." Oh, sorry. What do you do when someone just doesn't like you? And listen to his story and see how his ideas about being civil. Okay. He says, okay, la 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 la. He summarizes his belief system that enabled him to transform extreme hate. What we do too much is we talk about each other, we talk at each other, or we talk past each other. I have found that talking with each other is much more effective. Okay, so keep that in mind. Talking with each other. Definitely easier said than done. And why is it difficult to have a civil dialogue? In part, there is a biological basis to this. In our brains, there is a small almond-shaped component called the amygdala. And the amygdala is referred to as the nervous watchman or the smoke detector. And basically, I think I talked about this briefly in the chapter on emotions, which is chapter 9, I think. So what the amygdala does is it scans when you're in a situation. It kind of says, okay, is this situation dangerous to me? And in the days of the caveman, so to speak, when the caveman was faced with a saber-toothed tiger, the amygdala would say danger, and all the blood would leave the brain. I'm I'm exaggerating here, and go basically to the feet to run away, and to the hands to fight. So what happens now is we are not faced with saber-toothed tigers, but the amygdala still encourages us into a fight or flight mode when we feel attacked in some way, when we're feeling defensive. Okay. And as I said, when we're like this amygdala hijacking, when the amygdala has hijacked our body, the blood is not flowing to the prefrontal cortex, which is where we can reason. Okay, so the book is going to go through some steps that we can take, or some guidelines that we can follow to encourage us to move away from amygdala hijacking to a more mindful state. Okay, full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure that I can do this. I would love to be able to do this, but I let my amygdala get the better of me in many situations. Okay, so you're going to have a conversation with someone, and this is a person who you frequently have a difference of opinion with, and I'm thinking of a certain person in my life who we have such opposite points of view that if some topics come up, I'm thinking, what a crackpot, how can you believe all of these theories? And she's thinking, what an idiot, why do you have your head buried in the sand? Why don't you believe any of this? Okay, so we either are not very civil, or we just stop talking about it. So I'm going to go through this thinking about, what can I do? Number one, when I have this conversation with this person, what I need to do is come with the goal of learning. Instead of me trying to convince this other person, what I need to do is go into the situation saying, I need to understand why she believes the things that she does. Okay, not to persuade, just to learn. And when something is said that I don't really understand, ask for clarification. When you said this, is this what you meant? You used this word. In my mind, this means such and such. Is that how you meant it? Okay. It's kind of, or also paraphrasing. Remember paraphrasing back from the chapter on listening. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you believe blah, blah, blah. Okay. Wherever possible, find common ground. And sometimes common ground is at a, what do I want to say, not at a high level. It's like we are both so passionate about these topics because we care about people and we want the best for people. So if we could keep that in mind, our thoughts are governed by doing what's best for our families. Okay. Maybe I can do that one. Okay. Acknowledge and empathize. To say, oh, okay, now that you explained this, I have a better idea of why you wanted to do this. Or one of my favorites is, I can't even imagine how you felt when this happened. Because, it's true. And I can't, I can't say, oh, I know how you feel. So I have to acknowledge that I'm trying to empathize, but I don't have the similar situation. Possibly the most difficult one for me is to keep a civil tone. When my emotions are up, when my amygdala has hijacked me, my voice gets faster, louder, and I think a little higher pitched. I know I've been in meetings where I've had to say, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me calm down a little bit. Okay. Because remember how important the nonverbals are. So something like tone can get in the way of the message that you're trying to convey. And so be on the lookout for to avoid sarcasm. Okay. Talk about your communication. Meta communication. Remember, I'm having a hard time with that. Is there another word you could use? Like I just said, I'm sorry that I raised my voice. Let me calm down a little bit. It's also important to take responsibility. Try using I language rather than you language. Remember in chapter 6 when we talked about language? So instead of me saying something like, that's just you're nuts to believe this. I could say something like, um, let's see, hmm, I don't, I don't understand. No, I can't even. I'm really struggling with because I'm thinking about the certain person to say something like, okay, I'm taking responsibility. I disagreed with this because of what I've gone through. Even to say something like, I apologize for raising my voice, for slamming the door, whatever it is. The next point: allow both parties equal time. Don't talk too much, but also don't let the other person steamroll you by talking too much. So you if you notice you're talking a lot, you could say to the other person, so what's your point of view here? Or if the other person is talking a lot, you I don't know, it's harder to say, I'd like to share with you how I feel about this. May I do that now? If you're getting heated, consider a timeout. Let's talk about this later. You know what? Right now, we seem to be getting really upset about this. Let's plan to talk about this next week when we meet. And choose the time and place. You know how people say holidays are very stressful because the family gets together and certain topics come up? That might not be a good time to bring up some of these topics that make you feel uncivil. So, or at the end of a long day when you're tired, or you're a morning person and the other person is not a morning person. Maybe having a discussion over breakfast is not a good idea. Okay, so I want to read this directly from the textbook. There's no guarantee that if you follow these guidelines, you'll walk away from your difficult conversations with issues resolved and a warmer relationship. That doesn't mean it's not worth the attempt. If two parties do their best to civilly and respectfully discuss their differences, that's a noble goal in and of itself. Even if the other person doesn't match your civility, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you communicated responsibly. And isn't that the name of the game? You cannot control the other person. You cannot force another person to be a more effective communicator. You can only work on yourself. And I would argue that really there's nothing to lose by trying this. All right. So I hope you do. And this is the end of this chapter.